We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Monday, starting another week. Some interesting things could happen this week. There's a possibility we will hear more verdicts or decisions coming from the Supreme Court. One of those could very well be the immunity case, and it'll be interesting to find out what happens. Do they do the right thing and say, no, Donald Trump doesn't have immunity, or do they send it back to the lower court just to delay more? It's hard to say what they're going to do, but we'll wait and see how it all works out. We'll talk about it, of course, when it occurs. Um, Yesterday, I had the TikTok Live as the podcast. I like doing those. You know how I like people interacting with the show, with the emails, and we've got some emails coming up, and with having listeners on the show. TikTok kind of gives us a combination of both. The TikTok Live. Get a lot of people coming through, a lot of people asking questions, some of them asking dumb questions, some of them asking questions over and over again. But we have a good time with it, and it keeps me talking. I don't even have to think about talking. I've always got something to say, and it moves along at a pretty good pace. So if you like it a little more fast pace, the TikTok lives will do it. Now, I haven't done a lot of TikTok lives because typically we have the Trumplafucks coming in and they make a mess of it, try to create chaos with it, try to get you shut down. Um, Last couple of times, I think I'm noticing a pattern. I'm fortunate. I have a couple, three moderators, Great Captain and some others that come into the TikTok live and kind of keep an eye on Trumplafucks and block them when they start talking some shit. So that keeps us going for a while. And I can usually get into an hour and 15 minutes. And then what'll happen is one of the moderators will come to me and say, listen, Mike, they're coming hard now. They're reporting, they're doing all kinds of stuff. They're going to shut this down fairly quickly. And then at that point, I go into the wrap up. We wrap it up before they can do anything. And of course, the Trumplafucks lose again. So that's the way we're going to do it. I'm going to try to do more lives. It's fun to do, and it's killing two birds with one stone. Of course, kind of a lazy bastard. So if I can do the TikTok live and then turn that into a podcast, two birds, one stone. What the fuck? Now, you notice the different background. It's familiar, but it's different than what you normally see. That's because I am in Savannah, Georgia, as we speak. My wife and I flew down um, afternoon yesterday, and we love coming to Savannah. As you know, we've talked about it many times. My wife and I have a small condo down here. We took some um, retirement money, and I said to my wife, "What are you going to do with that money?" She says, "Well, we're just going to leave it for the kids." I said, "So for the next 25, 30 years, it's just going to sit there." She said, "Well, yeah." I said, "There's no reason you shouldn't benefit from that money somehow." "Yeah, but we got to leave it to the kids." "Well, now we don't have to leave it to the kids. They've already got enough coming." But so we compromised. We took the money, put it into a condo. And while it's still a good investment for my kids because it's increasing in value as property does, but we also get to we get to benefit from it, enjoy it before we die. Seemed like a good fix. So we have this little condo down in South Savannah, and it's a great place. We love Savannah. We love the restaurants, the culture, the beaches, all this stuff. It's very nice to come down, and that's where I am. So the TikToks you see and the podcast for the next few days are going to be from right here in Georgia. So just to give you a heads up on that. So anyway, we do have a number of emails, which we are going to get to now. First one says, "Hi, Boomer. Hearing one emailer describing Judge Marchand sentencing Trump to a prison sentence to start immediately was delightful to hear, and it's exactly what should happen. But we know it won't. No, we don't know it won't. See, that's the thing. This is where I have my problem. People assuming the worst. Don't do that. If you assume the worst, chances are you're going to get the worst. Assume the best. Deal with the worst if you get it, but assume the best and you're more likely to get it. Emailer goes on and says, I have a suggestion for how the judge could strike a balance that would be hard to attack as unjust. Sentence him to something like 6 months or a year, something within guidelines, not a slap and not overtly harsh, but defer the sentence to go after the election, meaning even if he won, he'd go to prison immediately following the election. Well, all right. Here's the thing. He's going to appeal it. He's not going to go into jail right away, no matter what. Let them sit on the fact that their candidate is headed to prison. Of course, all of that would push the pending appeal. Yeah. Now, I should say this. We presume that he will appeal it, and we presume that he will get a stay of the sentence while on appeal. That doesn't mean it has to happen that way. And frankly, the way he's treated Judge Juan Marchand and disrespected the court, he might say, no, the sentence isn't stayed. You're going in right now. Um, the fact that he got the convictions is pretty damaging, though. Whether he goes to jail or not, I have another option for that. Um, um, hold on a second. He's got some more. But in the contempt of court sentence, him to 1 day per occurrence to be deferred until immediately following the Republican convention. Let them have their hate fest wallowing in the reality that he goes to jail for 12 to 13 days immediately following, and know that's all Trump will rail about. This feels balanced and would create the appropriate spectacles. Best garage door Jeff. Get this, no PSA or PS. Anyway, Jeff, yeah, I think that would probably work. But I don't know that delaying it till after the convention is a great idea. I think the sooner we get Donald Trump out of the narrative, the better, the more noise he makes. We can let everybody else scream their heads off, but it's not working for them very well. We can all speculate as to what's going to happen here. Will he get jail time? Will he not get jail time? Will the violations of the gag order get addressed? I think the gag order things will get addressed one way or another. It will either enhance the amount of time he gets in the sentence, or it'll be a separate thing. And I'd like to have it be a separate thing. What I'd like to do is say he gets a year in jail. That is naturally going to go beyond the election because of the appeals, as long as the judge is willing to stay the sentence until after the appeal. But the violations of the gag order, that's a whole different thing. That happened numerous times. And it's conceivable to me, and this is coming from nowhere because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm just trying to rationalize this out. Get sentenced to a year in jail. It happens when it happens based on the appeals. But the violation of gag order, I don't think that can be appealed. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't think it can be appealed. I say at the sentencing, he says you get a year, go ahead, appeal whatever you got to do, but you fucked up on the violations of the gag order. So I'm going to drop you in jail for 3, 4, 5 days just to let you think about it and maybe let you think twice between now and the appeals before you open your fucking fat trap. Again, Jeff, you say tomatoes, I say tomatoes. Neither one of us know shit about shit. We're all just hoping against hope. Whatever he gets is real punishment. And of course, we will know on July 11th when that sentencing happens. And not too far away, less than a month away, we will know what Donald Trump's sentence is going to be. All right, the next one says, hey, Boomer and Boomer Brigade, not to be conspiratorial or anything, but why is the Republican Party doing total batshit crazy crap that will wreck them in the polls in November? Are they sending some kind of message, or do they know something we don't, or is there some kind of scorched earth policy before they get destroyed in November? This and the ridiculous decisions by SCOTUS that has totally pissed off the majority of the people. My question is why? They're not that stupid. They must know what the reaction will be in November. It's actually arrogant and very strange. Let's keep our eyes on the ball here. Your thoughts, Boomer, Z-Man? I've been thinking about that. People have suggested maybe they're just trying to tank the thing, kind of like what Donald Trump said about the debate. I may just lose. Yeah, sure you will, motherfucker. But here's the thing. You're wondering what the strategy is. Let's go back to when Donald Trump started as president in 2016 up to this moment in time. Tell me one strategy that the Republicans have used. There's never been a strategy. It's always been reactionary. It's always been emotional. It's always answering something the Democrats did or trying to own the libtards. There is no real strategy or mind process in this thing. And here's my 2 cents on it. They're still in that mental state. They don't come up with strategies. They just react to what Democrats do or whatever. But I think they're feeling the pressure now. They probably do see the things that we see and how they're just cutting their own throats. I'm sure they see that. Now, a logical person, a normal minded person might step back and go, oh, how do I fix that? I think instead the Republicans are, as I say, reactionary and very emotional about this. So they're doing what a narcissist would do when he's caught in a corner and there is no way out, no way to spin it, no way to do anything. They're just flailing now. They are going crazy because they're taking a lot of risks. They think they know what's going to help them and they don't think about it. They just do it. They don't, they do everything all the time. This is a panic actions by the Republicans. And what happens when you panic and you react and you flail? You always lose. So I think that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at the Republicans in panic, knowing that they're going to lose. So they've really got nothing to lose at this point. So they'll just try everything. They'll throw everything they can at the fucking wall. Just my 2 cents. All right. The next one says, hello, Mike. Erwin from Belgium here. I wanted to draw your attention to a method that Professor Alan Lichtman developed to predict the outcome of the presidential election. He's got it right since 1982, so he says anyway. And now the method does not pay attention to any polls. It consists of 13 yes and no questions. Professor Lichtman calls them the 13 keys. If 6 of them are false, any 6 of them, no matter which ones, then the White House is lost for the party of the incumbent president and the other party wins. Okay. The professor developed this method in the 80s in collaboration with a Russian seismologist who used to predict earthquakes. They view presidential elections as a period of stability when the White House remains in the hands of the same party, or an earthquake when it goes to the other party. I don't include a link, but if you search for Professor Alan Lichtman or 13 Keys to Predict a Presidential Election, I'm sure you'll find more info about this. You should check him out. I'm familiar with the name. I think I've seen him on TV, but I will probably do that. By the way, although not all 13 questions can be answered definitively, the method predicts for now that Biden wins. Well, that's what I got. Erwin from Belgium. That's what I got too. I've been telling you this for two years since Donald Trump has decided to run for the presidency. If you look at all the factors, Roe v. Wade, 34 felony convictions, just some of the shit, as was mentioned in the previous email, they seem to be doing everything to kill themselves in this upcoming election. If you look at that alone, hell, if you look at the overturning Roe v. Wade, there is no way for them to win. There is no way for Donald Trump to win. That's if Donald Trump survives. And when I say survive, I don't mean die. I mean maybe just become incapacitated mentally or physically with all the pressure he's dealing with. But we'll see. If you have an interest, check that out. Next one says, hello, Mike. I'm writing to you with a heavy heart. When I was listening to your podcast with Ed and you guys were discussing the Supreme Court decision to reverse the ban of bump stocks, it gave me such a foreboding sense, and what Ed predicted came true. We had a mass shooting here in Michigan at a splash pad where parents took their kids to enjoy water and sun. I was a mile away at my church when it happened. I'm sick to my stomach. My niece takes her three children there often, but thankfully she wasn't there. But sadly, a lot of families with small children were. A mother and two of her children were shot. Her 8-year-old is in critical condition. The shooter was able to reload 3 times and shot 28 shots. Apparently, he was suffering from mental issues. Yeah, I guess. If that's the case, why does he own a gun or so much ammo? While the sheriff was talking to the press, my election denier and MAGA representative, John James, was standing behind him to show his face as if he gives a fuck. He will just go back to Congress and vote against any gun or mental legislation. On the local level, it doesn't matter what my governor or legislature does to deter these kinds of shootings. It will not help because just south of us is Indiana and Ohio, where everyone and their grandmother can get guns and ammo without any helpful regulations. We have to do our jobs this November and elect Democrats at the federal and local level. Nothing will change unless we vote out corrupt politicians. Republicans in red states keep enacting laws that harm regular Americans. They don't care about kids, students, working people, or seniors. They just do things to benefit the rich and turn the benefit to themselves. Please vote blue, everyone, especially young people. It's about your future that's at stake. Thank you, V. Well, thank you very much, V. I appreciate the comments, and it is a sad situation. I thought about this after the decision came down about the bump stocks from the Supreme Court. You know, something else is going to happen. We have so many mass shootings in this country. I wonder if the Supreme Court justices feel like they have blood on their hands. I wonder if the NRA or Republican representatives and senators feel like they have blood on their hands. I know they don't, but we know they do. And if we're waiting for them to do the right thing, we also know that will never happen. So V makes a good point. The only option we have here is to vote them out of office, eradicate the Republicans and the Trump-lefucks, and get something done about guns. It says a lot that this country, supposed to be the greatest country in the world, has more mass shootings and more gun deaths than any other country anywhere near us. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely unacceptable. And it's absolutely horrifying. And these people, these Republicans, don't care, like you said, V, about these people. Kids, students, seniors, they don't give a shit about that as long as they get votes and get money and keep the NRA happy. We have to change that. We can't change the minds of the Republicans or the Trump-lefucks. They're too greedy and too self-enriching. We've got to force them to do that by forcing them out. And V is exactly right. The best and only way we can do that is in November when we vote. Make sure not just MAGA, not just Donald Trump, every Republican is eradicated from government. It's like when somebody has cancer, you have to take out the cancer and a lot of the tissue around it because it might be tainted and might grow back and metastasize and ultimately kill you. And I see that's the case with the Republicans. It's not just MAGA. It's not just Donald Trump. It's all the Republicans because they stood by Donald Trump through this all. Even if they want to say, well, we're not MAGA, well, you're certainly accessories after the fact. So you got to go. Thank you, V. The next one says, Mike, I want to thank you for what you do. Although I'm not a boomer, I'm in my late 30s, and I find your show to be a source of encouragement and rational thought amid a media landscape that often stirs the pot for attention. Are you familiar with the concept of an echo chamber? It's an environment where people are only exposed to opinions and information that reinforce their own beliefs. Often when I hear listeners' comments on your show, they seem to be based on rumors. Chris, yeah. we've talked about this before. Echo chamber might be like Fox News. People watch Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax because they get the information that they want to hear, and it supports in their mind that they're right. But as I've said before, I've talked to people who watch Fox News and bring up some point, and they act as if they never heard it. And the problem is they've never heard it because they're getting news from a source that's not, in fact, news. And and you hit the nail on the head too, Chris. These times that I get these emails where they're the doomsdayers. Oh, the polls. Oh, this is going to happen. They are doing exactly what you're saying, Chris. They're getting this information from somewhere, and I'll guarantee you they don't know where. It's just in the ether. And just because it's in the ether and not coming directly out of Sean Hannity's mouth, they figure it must be true or it's something they need to worry about. But the fact is, if you could track it back and find out where it started, I'll guarantee you it came out of a Republican's mouth. But it was out there and bounced around enough that people will hear it and go, oh my God, that could be true. That could be true. And then, of course, I climb all over them and give them shit. Not because I don't like them or not because I don't appreciate their input. It's because they're getting sucked in to the scam. And that frustrates me because it's bad enough we have to deal with what we have to deal with. But if our own are being hoodwinked, gaslit, or fooled, we got to be better than that. We got to be more cognizant of what really is going on. We got to be more careful of where we're getting these sources. Just because Jake Tapper is talking about it or whatever the fuck doesn't mean it's real. They will report the sensational, whether it's true or not. Put it that way. All right. Next one says, good evening and happy Father's Day. Well, thank you very much. Billy and I are catching up on your podcast. Today, while at work, I had a customer come in to use the bathroom. He and his party were traveling for the holiday. Well, this one dude asked how much for a king size Reese's peanut butter cup. Because it rang up over $3, he started calling it a Biden bar. Right then, I had to keep my mouth shut. You're a better woman than I am a man because I would not have kept my mouth shut. She goes on to say, I can't believe people applauded Diaper Donnie when he finally got on stage in Arizona, especially after he told them he doesn't care about them. Why couldn't Donnie Dipstick keel over right there on stage? A lot of people think he's just saying shit like getting rid of taxes for votes. I'm right with them. More and more people are getting tired of his lies. Well, I hope you had a great day with your family. Take care. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's what he's doing. It's going back to what I said before. This motherfucker's flailing. He doesn't know what to say, when to say it, or how to say it. So he's just saying everything. And when people do that, they fucking lose. That was signed by Jamie and Billy. All right. We've got we had one other thing here I wanted to check. Somebody else sent me a note, and it was regarding me tearing into one of the emailers about them being doomsdayers. And I didn't pull it up here, so I'm going to have to try to find it here in a second. I think the gentleman's name was Chuck, and he responded to um, my tongue lashing, if you will. Let's see if I can find this quick here. I don't know why I didn't grab it. Um, okay, here it is. Now, remember, Chuck is this guy that came in and told me, I told him that what he was saying was ridiculous and doomsdayer, and I kind of went off the deep end on him. And Charles writes back, Mike, thank you for the ass kicking you gave me. I really deserved it a lot. Keep up the good job you do. Now you see, I get people coming to me all the time saying, you can't do that. You're going to lose listeners. And I have no intention or interest in losing listeners. And I have no intention of trying to embarrass anybody. But I do think it's necessary to straighten people out, especially if they're on our side. Now, I've had occasion to talk shit about Chuck here the last time, or Z-Man too. And I've said both times, every time somebody says, oh, they're going to be mad at you, they'll never listen again. And I said, these guys are of similar age to me, grew up in the same era. Um, I think we're still cool. I think we're all right. I give him shit, and you're more than welcome to give me shit. I get shit all the time, all day, every day, and I pretty much ignore it because it's coming from people I don't respect. Now, if you, the listening audience here, gave me a hard time, I would take it more to heart, but I wouldn't be upset about it. I'd look at it and say, you're wrong, you could be right, whatever. My point is that with men of a certain age, meaning my age, this busting balls, if you will, this was kind of how we grew up. And if somebody said something stupid, we would give them shit. And in return, they might give us shit. We're, we're not the uh, emotionally fragile people that we see of some of the younger people today. Not all of them, but some of them, where if you call them out on something, they're going to pout and never talk to you again. That's not how it was when we were growing up. I called on a lot of friends of mine that I still know today, and they did the same to me. We're all going for the same thing. We're trying to win this motherfucking war, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to win. And we can't afford people to be confused or not confident about what we're doing. Like I said in a TikTok earlier today or yesterday, I said, you know what? We have to recognize what we've got going on here. For years, these people, the Trumplafucks, have used the same tactic. Get in your face, make threats, try to scare you. And then when you are scared, you back down and allow them to have their way. And this is why we're in the state we're in currently, because we allowed it to happen. We didn't push back. Well, we're in a much different situation now. These guys are in trouble. They've got a lot of issues that they've got to deal with. So they're on the run. And when you've got your enemy on the run, that's not the moment where you let up or go easy on them. You got to continue after them. You got to shut them down, and you got to finish the job. Because as I've said before, these people can rise up out of the ashes at any given time. They get a leader like Donald Trump, and all of a sudden they crawl out from under the rocks and they're fucking with our country. We have to set a tone. We have to make an example of these people. And I'm not talking about violence or anything like this, but we've got to devastate them legally, politically, electorally. We've got to just devastate them. So they're going to think twice before they come back. Eventually, they will come back, but it's going to take a while for them to lick their wounds and regroup and do it again. So when I talk to people who say, "Oh no, it's trouble," those polls, Donald Trump could win, Project 2025. I don't want to hear that shit. It goes back to what we've talked about with Project 2025 too. I keep getting people coming to my page saying, "You got to talk about it. You got to go in depth," and I don't want to because it's one of their strategies. It's just to make people fearful. And somebody came back and said, "Well, we're not fearful. It's just going to make us angry and fight harder." And I said, "Really? The information in Project 2025 is the thing that's finally going to make you angry and fight." So taking the constitutional rights away from all women and overturning Roe v. Wade, that wasn't enough to make you angry and fight. The attempted coup on our country, the undermining of democracy and the overturning of elections, that wasn't enough to make you angry and fight. We've got plenty to fuel our anger and plenty to fuel the fight. But the way I see Project 2025, it's not a thing unless Donald Trump gets elected. I've told you before, there's no real route for Donald Trump to get elected. It's just not going to happen. So if we go and we do readings on Project 2025, all it's going to do is take people who aren't really paying attention and make them even more fearful. Oh my God, this is going to happen. Well, it's not going to happen. But this is the game the Republicans play. It's bullying 101. Get in your face, scare you, and hope you demur. That's what they want. And so when somebody comes to me with an email where they're demurring, I get pissed off because you're playing right into their strategy, right into their game. You need to stop that shit right now. You need to slap the taste out of their mouth and push them down. That's what you need to do. And I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy here, and I'm not talking about physicality. I'm just talking about with your mindset, your presence, your intentions. When you're going after somebody legally, you take every option you have in front of you. This is why, I'm frustrated about some of the things going on with the courts now. Donald Trump isn't being held to account as much as you or I would. That can change if we make enough noise. And that's why I'm saying we need to make the right noise. We don't need to be fearful, because if you're fearful right now, that does us no good. That does the cause no good. Zero. And I refuse to hear it. And I'm sorry if that sounds intolerant, but as you know, this is my show and I'll do whatever the fuck I want on my show. Kind of. Kind of. Anyway, we will take a quick break and we'll take a quick break. We got a lot of news stories to get to, and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, recording from the friendly confines of South Savannah. I'm in my living room here. Just a different living room, not all the pictures. We got some pictures and stuff up, but we are in Savannah. I will be here till Thursday morning, where I'll head back, and podcast for Friday will be from my home in Mound, Minnesota. So that's the schedule. One of the things that I'm most excited about, the next exciting thing that's coming up is, of course, the debate. The debate's an interesting thing. I think Donald Trump is having some second thoughts about this. Donald Trump initially said there would be, we should give Joe Biden a drug test. Up until the time when he went to meet with the probationary officer and they required him to take a drug test and he refused to do it. It's funny. He's not talking about the drug test as much anymore. But he did come up with something else that I found kind of interesting. He's saying that Joe Biden needs to take a cognitive test. Joe Biden sounds fine recently. He's a little slower than somebody, half his age, but he does put together sentences. He doesn't have problems with words. These are all things that Donald Trump had. And the reason why Donald Trump said this is because in his mind, he's already taken the cognitive test. That was a couple of years ago and wouldn't really qualify for this particular situation. He'd have to take another cognitive test. But the funny thing about this is, he said, I took a cognitive test, and he took it with his presidential doctor, who is now a representative out of Texas. And he said, I took my cognitive test, and Dr. Ronnie Johnson said I was better than ever, better than anybody. And the irony about this thing is that this doctor did say that, and this doctor is a friend of Donald Trump's, but his name isn't Ronnie Johnson. It's Ronnie Jackson. And how he didn't know his name really escapes me. And it kind of diminishes the whole concept that he's cognitively sound. I don't think you'll see anybody taking a cognitive test when the debate comes. I'm not sure what the debate is going to be. I know all the rules, and we're going to talk about them here in a moment. There are a lot of rules that don't work in Donald Trump's defense or in his way of doing debates, and he doesn't really debate. He just talks loud and long and never shuts up. But these rules make it difficult for him to use his strategy. All right. Both President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump have agreed to a set of rules regarding their upcoming debate on CNN, including allowing microphones to be muted except when it's their turn to speak, the network said Saturday. That's interesting. You know how Donald loves to ramble. He's going to start talking, and halfway through his fucking speech, he's going to be shut down. He's not going to be able to interrupt Joe Biden. And that really is his specialty. That is his one strategy. So that's going to be a problem for Donald Trump. Now, the event is scheduled for June 27th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time and will be the first presidential debate of the 2024 election cycle. Interesting thing about this debate is far earlier than most presidential debates. They usually come closer to the election, and that's for good reason. People want people to remember what happened in the debate. But Donald Trump did this because he needed attention. He needed something to fundraise off of. Now, the anchors for CNN that will be on this debate are Jake Tapper and Dana Bush. They are set to moderate the network's Atlanta, Georgia studios. The event will mark a departure from previous debates due to the lack of studio audience. It's also the first time since the 80s that the Commission on Presidential Debates will not be playing host. Although their podiums will be the same, a coin flip will determine at which position Trump and Biden will stand. 2 commercial breaks will punctuate a 90-minute discussion between the Republican and Democrat, but campaign staffers are not allowed to interact with their candidate during those breaks. Each candidate will be given a bottle of water, a pad of paper, and a pen, and no pre-written notes or props are allowed. That's a problem for Donald Trump. He can't talk to his people. He can't bring in pre-written notes or props of any kind. So for 90 minutes, Donald Trump is going to have to think for himself. He's going to have to come up with the answers from his own diminished mind. How do you think that's going to go? Probably not too well. Now, according to CNN, Tapper and Bass will use all tools at their disposal to enforce timing and ensure a civilized discussion. Now, to qualify for the debate, candidates need to secure at least 15% support in 4 separate national polls that meet CNN standards. The network noted that while it was still technically possible for independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to qualify, this is unlikely to happen, particularly given how few state ballots he's expected to appear on. Yeah, I've told you before, Robert F. Kennedy is going to disappear before November. I don't think he'll be on the ballot. He's running out of money. I heard a story about Robert F. Kennedy saying that this woman Shanahan that he brought in as a vice presidential candidate, she's very wealthy, and she brought $10 million with her, and she put it into the campaign. And what they're saying now is that without that $10 million right now, 4 or 5 months before the election, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would already be in debt. He's having trouble fundraising. I mean, he's coming up with all kinds of shit. He's coming up with trips to go whale watching and raffle tickets. Yeah, he's scurrying around trying to get money, and it's not working. So when I say he's not going to be around in November, logic would tell you that makes sense, because without money, he's got nowhere to go. Now, over the last 2 presidential election cycles, Trump has repeatedly refused to keep his responses contained to questions directed at him. His chaotic style appeared to encourage his GOP challengers to adopt similar techniques in the Republican debates held last fall, even in Trump's absence. Biden was famously moved to protest Trump's interruptions in a September 2020 presidential debate by saying, you remember this, "Will you shut up, man?" Muting the candidates' microphones will help viewers follow along, although we suppose a muted candidate could still shout while the other is speaking. Um, um, and you can expect that. You'll hear Donnie in the background off mic going, "I built a fucking wall." All right. I was talking about this earlier. Donald Trump on Saturday night suggested Joe Biden should have to take a cognitive test, only to confuse who's administered the test to him in the next sentence. Same story I just told you. The former president and presumptive Republican nominee referred to Texas Republican Rep. Ronnie Jackson, who was the White House physician for part of the presidency, as Ronnie Johnson. The moment came as Trump was questioning Biden's mental acuity, something he often does on the campaign trail and, of course, in social media. He doesn't even know what the word inflation means. I think he should take a cognitive test like I did, the former president said of Biden during a speech at a convention at the Turning Point Action in Detroit. You know what's interesting about that show? They did it in Detroit, hopefully to appeal to black voters. And they made all kinds of claims. Oh, we've got lots of black folks out here. But when it came out to it, there was about 90% white. It was 90% white. That's not surprising, given that we're talking about white supremacists. Seconds later, he continued, "Doc Ronnie Johnson, does everyone know Ronnie Johnson, congressman from Texas? He was the White House doctor, and he said I was the healthiest person he feels in history, so I like him very much indeed immediately." He called him Ronnie Johnson twice. He likes this guy so much, he doesn't recall his last name. Jackson was elected to Congress in 2021 and is one of Trump's most vociferous defenders on the Capitol Hill, and he's a fucking goofball. Trump, who turned 78 on Friday, was made questioning whether the 81-year-old Biden is up for a second term, a centerpiece for his campaign. But online critics quickly seized on Saturday night gaffe with the Biden campaign, which has long fought off criticism about the Democratic president's verbal missteps, posting a clip of the moment minutes later. Trump took the cognitive test in 2018 at his own request, or so he says. Donald Trump says a lot of things. Most of it's a lie. And if Ronnie Johnson or Ronnie Jackson is the one that administered it to him, I don't think it has a lot of validity. Jackson told reporters at the time the exam is designed to detect early signs of memory loss and other mild cognitive impairment. Now, keep in mind, over and above the fact that Ronnie Jackson took it, Donald Trump lies. That was 6 years ago. A lot can happen in 6 years. A lot has happened to Donald Trump in 6 years, so we'd probably need to take that test again. The Montreal cognitive assessment that Trump took includes remembering a list of spoken words, listening to a list of random numbers and repeating them backward, naming as many that begin with, say, the letter F as possible within a minute, accurately drawing a cube and describing concrete ways that two objects like a train and a bicycle are alike. Trump later said that he had to remember and accurately recite a list of words. Remember this? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. And I remembered them. Wow, that's impressive, Donnie. Let's take another test and see how the last 6 years has worn on your ass. All right. Now, of course, yesterday was Father's Day, and it's not an American holiday until former President Donald Trump issues his all caps complaint and is immediately ruthlessly mocked. How many times does this guy have to get embarrassed before he just shuts up for a while? Now, yesterday on Father's Day, Trump decided to celebrate his status as a family patriarch with a lengthy tirade against radical left degenerates. The former president recently convicted on criminal charges, accused of trying to influence the judicial system against him. President Joe Biden's campaign was quick to respond on Sunday evening with a succinct synopsis. This is what Biden's campaign said. Convicted felon Trump posted a deranged all caps Father's Day message attacking the judicial system and promising revenge and retribution against those who don't support him. That's what that motherfucker did. Hours earlier, Trump, who has a history of marking holidays by posting angry rants against his foes, issued the following screed on Truth Social. Now, keep in mind, these are in all caps. Happy Father's Day to all, including the radical left degenerates that are rapidly bringing the United States of America into the third world nation status with their many attempts at trying to influence our sacred court system into breaking to their very sick and dangerous will. Now, understand, I had to hold my breath to do that because in that entire section, there is no period, not one period, and there is only one bit of punctuation, and that is after the last word he wrote a comma because apparently he wants to continue that sentence. He finished up by saying, "We need strength and loyalty to our country and its wonderful Constitution. Everything will be on full display come November 5th, 2024, the most important day in the history of our country. Make America great again." And then he caught up in punctuation and he used 3 exclamation points. Donnie loves the run-on sentences. Oh, he loves those motherfuckers. The Biden-Harris campaign was not only raising a sly eyebrow at Trump's comment, quickly flooded with dozens of messages of frustration, amusement, and rage. He always has the worst holiday greetings of anyone I know, wrote ex-user Franklin. Such a narcissistic small man, added Don Young McDaniel. Yeah, there is no question about that. He is a small man. And if you notice that every time we do have a holiday, he'll go, Merry Christmas, especially to those dirty bastard Democrats who are trying to railroad me. It somehow takes a little shine off the holiday greeting, doesn't it? You know what's interesting about the Father's Day thing, too? On Father's Day, he got a lot of well wishes. He got well wishes from his kids, all the sycophantic politicians, all those folks. You got all kinds of well wishes. Even Joe Biden wished him well on his birthday. But you know who didn't wish him well on his birthday? Melania Trump. Nary a word from Melania Trump when it came to Donnie Trump's birthday or Father's Day for that matter. Could there be trouble in paradise? I don't know how smart Melania is. I don't think she's any better person than Donald Trump. I think she's just as bad, if not worse. But I think she's a little brighter. And I think she's embarrassed by how her husband is fucking up her financial future. I don't know if she has any money set aside that he can't touch. But for her sake, she better, because Donnie Trump's losing all of it. Fucking all of it. Absolutely all of it. Now, this next story I find very interesting. A House Republican appearing on Fox News floated a bizarre plan to Attorney General Merrick Garland, taken into custody by the Sergeant of Arms of the House of Representatives. Now, why are they doing that? Why are they suggesting that? Well, because they held him in contempt of Congress. They sent it to the DOJ, where Merrick Garland is the boss, and said, we want you to indict Merrick Garland, the boss of the DOJ, for contempt of Congress. And Merrick Garland said, listen, motherfucker, We're not going to put out any indictments or anything like that. Certainly not going to indict myself, meaning Merrick Garland. But it was very clear that Joe Biden issued executive privilege on that audio recording that they want released. It's an audio recording between Robert Hur, the special counsel, and Joe Biden regarding the classified documents found at Joe Biden's home and his office and such. They want the audio recording published. Now, it's interesting because the entire transcript has been published, and Republicans had noted that this Robert Hur, this Republican plant, this Donald Trump nominated Republican plant, said that Joe was having trouble remembering things and talking right along all the same talking points that the Republicans are using. So clearly this was set up. But now they wanted to hear the audio recording so they could take out bits and pieces and try to embarrass Joe Biden. Now, every time they do that, they fail, but they're not going to get the opportunity in this situation. So what they're saying now is if the DOJ won't do it, well, then we'll send the sergeant of arms out to bring them in. Now, appearing on Sunday Morning Futures, Representative Paulina Luna, and she's a fucking doozy, told anchor Maria Bartiromo about her plan to use an obscure provision which hasn't been used in more than a century to enforce the contempt of Congress resolution it handed down Wednesday against the Attorney General. The DOJ has said it will not prosecute the Attorney General. Several months ago, I introduced a resolution for something called inherent contempt of Congress. This is something that Congress has the authority to do, and it hasn't been done since the early 1900s. I anticipated that the Department of Justice would not do their job, and so I had this teed up and ready to go. I brought this to Speaker Mike Johnson's attention. Yeah, tee that bitch up. And what that allows Congress to do is really be the punitive arm and really hold Garland accountable by using the sergeant at arms to essentially go and get him, as well as the tapes of the President Joe Biden's testimony in the probe of special counsel Robert Hur, bring him into the well of the House and really be check and balance on the Department of Justice. Luna insisted that she will push for a vote on her resolution that won't pass. I'll be surprised if it even gets put on the floor. But it's interesting when you talk about this. What's interesting about this is that if you're going to get the sergeant of arms, there was talk about this sort of thing quite a while ago. Do you remember? The Democrats talked about this when it came to members of the House that refused to testify in front of the January 6th committee. People like Andy Biggs, people like Kevin McCarthy, people like Scott Perry, people like Jim Jordan. All these people were subpoenaed to testify in front of the January 6th committee. None of them showed. Little ironic that these people who are guilty of not complying with a subpoena are now going after the Attorney General for not complying with their subpoena. Now, see, there's a big difference here. There was nothing holding them back other than Donald Trump from testifying in front of the J6 committee. Merrick Garland has a vastly different situation. And his situation is this. Joe Biden has already said that he's going to use executive privilege on this audio recording. He's not going to let it out. So Merrick Garland, even if he wanted to do it, he could not do it. It would not be possible for him to do it. So I wish them the best of luck, but if you're going to go get the sergeant of arms and get people that don't comply with subpoenas and don't testify, go ahead, get Merrick Garland, get Kevin McCarthy, get Andy Biggs, get Jim Jordan, get Scott Perry, get all these motherfuckers that didn't testify, and show us how credible you are. If you really believe this is an important thing, well, then you motherfuckers have to be put to the test too. I wanted to talk about something else here too. I've often said that people always talk about the polls. and how the polls are so close for Donald Trump, so close for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. In fact, in many cases, um, Donald Trump is supposed to be winning. And I've always said it's not a good indication of support for Donald Trump because we don't know who is backing these polling companies, who they're talking to, what they're asking them, what they're doing with the data once they have the data, and what their agenda is. And if we don't know all of those things, well, then why do we take them seriously? I mean, think about this. Um, 2016, the polls said Hillary Clinton would win. 2020, the polls said Donald Trump would win. 2022, they said there'd be a red wave. None of them were right. And we're still pretty early in the election for polls to have any impact at all. So I don't know why people put so much weight into polls. And I've often said that, fundraising might be a better example of support because people have to go in their pockets, take their hard earned money, and give it to a candidate. That to me is the essence of support. And we know that Joe Biden is out fundraising Donald Trump 2-1. We know Donald Trump has a capacity to lie about how much money he's getting. You remember the story back a while where Joe Biden had a very successful fundraising event where he raised $25 million in one night. One night. That was a record. Well, that got under Donald Trump's skin, and somehow, 3 days later, there was a fundraising event for Donald Trump, and he raised $50 million, double the record. Oh my God, that's incredible. But what was weird about that was that there was only like about 15 people there, and somehow they got $50 million out of 15 people. That just didn't seem to be right. And when the FEC came out with the filings as far as how much money people brought in, of course, Donald Trump was lying. He was absolutely fucking lying. He, it wasn't even close. Most of it was promises. And like I said, when they made those promises, how many of those promises do you think will be kept once he's convicted of crimes? I bet you a lot of them dropped off now because they see the likelihood of Donald Trump winning the presidency is slim to none. And why waste all the money on something that's already been lost? Anyhow, after he's convicted, he went around telling everybody that he had $140 million in fundraising. It was incredible. People were in uproar. Well, it's real easy for Donald Trump to say it, but the media and a lot of folks out there tend to believe it, even though we found out that he lied to us the last time. Why do you believe it this time? And when the FEC comes out with the paperwork on it, I'll guarantee you it'll show that he's lying. Donald Trump doesn't have that kind of support. If he did, he'd be doing a lot more shit in his campaign, and that campaign ain't doing nothing. But I got a little prediction for you. The other night, there was a fundraiser with a lot of Hollywood stars there. People like George Clooney, like Julia Roberts, people like that, of that level, A-list celebrities. And in that fundraising event, Joe Biden got $28 million. He broke his first record. And don't tell me Donald Trump had the record because he didn't. He fucking lied all the way. My prediction is this. This comes out. Joe Biden collects $28 million with all the stars from Hollywood. I'll guarantee you in the next couple of days, that Donald Trump will have a fundraiser and he will claim that they raised 56 million, at least to double what Joe Biden is. He needs to be thought of as more powerful and more of a draw than Joe Biden. The fact is, he's not. He's just not. Like I said, he went to Detroit, tried to appeal to black voters. The audience was 90% white because black voters aren't stupid. They know he's a white supremacist. And so this is the way Donald Trump does business. He will lie to you, and he will continue the lie until some people believe it. And the sad thing about it is that there are Democrats that will hear this and they will buy into it. And that is frustrating to me. That's why I get a little angry about it, because you're hurting the cause. You may be every bit a Democrat. You may want to see Donald Trump lose, but by repeating the shit that is coming from the Republicans, you're hurting the cause. So if you can't deal with logic and facts and truth, and you're going to listen to that bullshit, better off you don't say anything, because we don't need that kind of fucking energy when we're going after Donald Trump. Now, this is interesting. While he was in Detroit, Donald Trump, he wanted to go speak to a congregation in a black church. A Detroit pastor who hosted Donald Trump's much ridiculed church roundtable, which was promoted as a reach out to black voters, but later shown to have a large white turnout. This was in the church as well. It said that people laughed in his face when he suggested they attend. Pastor Lorenzo Sewell appeared on MSNBC Sunday night to discuss the surprising turnout at the Evangelical 180 Church and faced a direct question about the people in the audience. Charles Coleman said, "Was the audience mostly white?" He said, "I was very surprised about how many black people were actually physically in the building," Sewell replied. "I remember walking down Grand River, a place that is desolate of the west side of Detroit, and walking down the street and just inviting people, saying, 'The former president is here if you want to come,'" Sewell said. "They were laughing like I was when I was first approached." Critics noted Saturday that while the church was a mainly black congregation, photos caught by the media showed a lot of white people in the audience. "It's all lies, smoke and mirrors," wrote Jeff Timmer, a Republican and senior advisor at the anti-Trump Lincoln Project on X. Trump also reportedly failed to recognize Sewell, even as the pastor sat beside him. Sewell told Coleman Sunday that he has no political affiliation and hosted Trump to bring political leaders into his community. "I don't worship a donkey or an elephant," Sewell said. "I worship the Lamb of God slain for his sins of the world and anybody who can come to his house and be prayed over." Yeah. Well, if you want to perpetuate white supremacy and the destruction of this country, go ahead, let them in. This perspective stood in stark contrast to Coleman's next guest, Dr. Wendell Anthony, a pastor and president of the Detroit branch of the NAACP. Trump didn't articulate any policy. He articulated the fact that he wanted to come and get some black votes, Anthony said. "We don't need people to stand up on frivolity. We need you to come in and talk about policy. Don't fall for the snake, because every time you do, you get bit." That's kind of what I was saying. Don't buy the bullshit. Otherwise, you will get bit. You heard the story probably too, how Donald Trump met with a bunch of powerful CEOs, very wealthy CEOs from huge companies. One of them, Tim Cook from Apple. Now, all of these people went into that particular meeting maybe kind of leaning toward Donald Trump, because he is a friend of the wealthy and the corporate, and naturally they'd be interested in him as their president. But when they went in there, what they found was a little disturbing, because it was pretty disjointed. It didn't really make any sense. Donald Trump was going off on all kinds of tangents, and nobody could make heads or tails of everything he was saying. People were coming out of the meeting shaking their heads. Um, one of the CEOs said he just kept meandering. We didn't know what he was saying. This was an important meeting for Donald Trump because he needs their money. He needs it badly. But I'm willing to bet the vast majority of people, the CEOs in that particular meeting, don't have any interest in giving Donald Trump money. He's a lost cause at this point. As I've said before, why would you bury a bunch of money into somebody you know is going to lose? People give me shit. How do you know? How do you know? Well, I look at the facts. But don't just take my word on it. Take the word of some of the people that would normally support Donald Trump. They know it's coming. Donald Trump and the Trumplafucks knows it's coming. And the way we know they know it's coming, they're already talking about 2024 being a rigged election. It hasn't even come yet. We don't know what the outcome's going to be, but they are already talking about it being rigged. And why would they do that if they didn't think they were going to lose? Oh, yeah, they're going to lose big in November. They know it's coming, and they're going to have a talking point or an excuse or some kind of argument to prove they are right. They couldn't do it in 2020 when they were in power and Donald Trump was president. So to think that they'll try to pull something off now is, after all this time where they've been weakened and Donald Trump is not the president, is folly. What's going to happen after they lose and they say it was a hoax, people are just going to laugh at him. It's like the boy crying wolf. They're going to laugh at him. He'll be a laughing stock, and then he'll go on to be a pariah, and Donald Trump will go into the annals of history as a pariah and a butt of any jokes, much like Richard Nixon did when he resigned. So anyway, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.